Yeah, hello and welcome to this video. This is something I've not done for quite a while, a video on my over-the-board games. Something that I want to do often, but then simply lack time to prepare it properly. And yeah, this time I thought let's go for it and do one of my own games. Also, game is pretty fresh in my mind. It's been played just a couple of days ago in our local town championships, and it's been an interesting game. So let's get going. I've got the white pieces here against, you see the opponent name here, Sebastian Vermeeren. That's actually mistyped. I think it's double E. Yeah, I'm a pretty huge favorite in this game. That was the first round of the event. But yeah, it turned out to be a really interesting struggle. So let's get going. I played one knight f3. By the way, this is here all on Lichess. I think the analysis board here is pretty nice. It's just out of a study. And on the right hand side, you will see some of my prepared annotations. Yeah, I'll tell you some details about them when we scroll down how I do them. Okay, let's see. Knight f3 played by me. This is my default move if I don't really know anything better. Yeah, like sometimes if I have a specific idea in mind, I will play c4 or d4, or sometimes e4. Yeah, but knight f3 is what I play if I don't have any particularly great idea. He went e6, g3, and b6. Yeah, so a Queen's Indian type of setup. Yeah, certainly very solid playable option. G3, I also play c4 in this position, but oftentimes I just decide to, yeah, as a friend of mine often called it, build a house and then see what happens. Yeah, just do the 4 moves up to the fianchetto and then decide on the central formation. Yeah, knight f6 here played by black. Most obvious move, I guess. And here I went c4. That move probably makes the most sense in this position. The move d4, which looks perfectly normal, is in fact maybe not as precise as after c5. You don't really have the opportunity to play d5 as you would like to do. And probably after c4 takes, you get into something that you don't want. Yeah, you don't usually want this early trade where black will gain a tempo and that pawn and then get this check in an awkward moment. Or after the queen takes, black is not yet committed to having the bishop on e7, and this gives him sometimes additional options. For example, if a knight comes to c3, he can play bishop b4. So d4 is actually a little bit less precise here in this position. c4 is the better choice. Yeah, now he went with c5, transposing into symmetrical English. This will oftentimes start with 1 c4, 1 c5, and so on. Just a different move order here. Of course, black can also play bishop e7, castles, and still delay the decision in the center. So c5, I play knight c3, and he goes a6. a6 is a move that is played here quite frequently. Black usually chooses between bishop e7, d6, or a6. a6 is usually the sign that black is going for hedgehog, yeah, with d6 later. If he goes bishop e7 in this position, that will be a hedgehog most of the time, but not necessarily. It's a bit more flexible in that regard, maybe. There are many move order subtleties. a6, yeah, now white can go mostly rook e1, d4, or b3. I have always scored extremely well with b3, so I'm sticking with this. And now he surprised me with the move queen to c7. That's a very early commitment of the queen. It is often good on c7 in a hedgehog, but it's really early to put it there. However, I couldn't really find anything great to do now to refute it. Yeah, you cannot refute this move. but to really make it look bad in some way. So I decided to go just bishop b2 as was planned, bishop to e7. Yeah, and now white has a couple of different ideas what to do in the center. You have to somehow make a decision about the d and e pawn that have not yet moved. If you play d4 in this position, black will take. And now, of course, you can take with the queen, which is often seen, but this idea, starting with b3 and so on, is usually, for me at least, that's how I play it, is to take with the knight. And here I'd like to build up something with e3, f4, queen f3. This is what I want. However, here, black is ready to play queen to b7. And this is a little bit awkward. Yeah, f3 is not a move I like to play. I mean, the engine still kind of likes it, f3, e4, and of course it is a playable setup, but that was not my intention. I usually want to be ready to play queen f3 in such a situation and trade queens, then bring the king to e2 and then play f4, g4 and so on is the idea. So what I did is I delayed the whole thing and played e3 first. He castled. I went d4. Now I was expecting him to take. Knight takes, bishop takes, king takes. And after queen to b7, queen f3, takes, that we get an ending where white is a little bit better. It is nothing great, really, I have to admit that, but white has a little bit of something on the d pawn and the b6 pawn sometimes. If black plays d5, he also has to be wary of the somewhat weakened c6 square. This is all very, very little, yeah, but the hedgehog is a pretty good opening. It's not easy to get anything anyway. In the game, he surprised me by playing d6. Yeah, it looks a little bit like you see the moves before they actually are on the board, but I don't really see how to avoid that. Maybe I can somehow obscure the move list, but I don't know how. He played d6, just yeah, not reacting to the d4 move. This is actually an interesting move because it asks white now what to do with the central formation. The most obvious choice is d5 here. That is what white definitely would like to play in order to somehow punish what black did. However, after e takes, I don't have the typical idea of moving the knight and then take here with the piece, because the early queen c7 has covered the b7 bishop. So here he can take and has an extra pawn. That wouldn't be possible with the queen on d8. I mean, the computer actually gives white some compensation, but yeah, it's really not great. And if I just recapture the normal move, let's say, I was worried about b5. Yes, the engine still likes white, but I wasn't so sure during the game. Yeah, b5 in already for black. He has knight here to b6 maybe, put some pressure here, and rook e8, bishop f8, g6. He can probably, yeah, play some sort of Benoni. Maybe also move the f6 knight, play bishop f6. Some sort of Benoni where I wasn't sure if my pieces with all those fianchettos are really rightly or correctly positioned. It might be not bad for me, but it wasn't something that I totally liked. So I decided to play a waiting move, rook c1, and then see what happens. Yeah, maybe he takes after all. He didn't. Just kept the tension. That was really interesting. I mean, just keeping the center and waiting for white to make some kind of commitment. Okay, again I can play d5, but if I wanted that I would have done it a move earlier. I decided at the end to play queen to e2, just keeping the tension, and potentially go for the move e4, e3 to e4. Here black has some choices. We see a game here in the annotation, Akopian Pankratov. This is I think a rapid game from the Berlin Rapid World Championships, where Pankratov played knight to e4. This is a very standard way of playing this, simply stopping white from advancing any further. I probably would have played rook fd1, and now black, as the computer suggests, will probably take, and now has to think about playing bishop e4 or not. This is often an idea. Yeah, 95, a funny tactic here by the engine, but it's still not a bad move. Or black can simply stay and await proceedings. The thing is that white, the best that white usually can do is go e4, and then we get the hedgehog. What he played is also perfectly okay. He played rook e8, and now I played e4, allowing the transformation into c takes, knight takes, into a full hedgehog. Surprisingly, he did not do that. I think black should simply take and then play like a normal hedgehog move. The computer, as you see, likes white in this position. It gives white 0.5, 0.6, but this is a typical computer assessment based on the extra space. Of course, the space means something, but we know that in the hedgehog, black's solidity is extremely difficult for white to handle. You don't really have much ideas for white to win quickly, use that space quickly. You rather have to maneuver. Yeah, I probably would have played that in a pretty slow way. h3, king h2, maybe try f4 at some stage. You have to really be careful about the pawn advances. For example, if you are completely like not patient at all and play something like that, black might quickly push e5 at some point. Yeah, immediately probably knight f5 is a problem. Knight d5 actually is given by the comp. Okay, but any f4, you have to be aware that e5 might open up rook against queen. So this is what I expected, but he surprised me by playing the move e5 and simply stopping white from going any further. Yeah, e5 I think is the move that now gives white an opening advantage. White has two main choices, taking or playing d5. I relatively quickly played d5. There's more than one reason for it. The capture, I assume d takes, but knight takes is a move. The capture is also a bit better for white. The reason is that I'm quicker with putting something on d5. In fact, the engine suggests to play knight d5 immediately. Also, this knight can be relatively quickly connected to two light squares. Something like this looks better than black maneuvering with his knights. Black can try knight f86, but this is not that easy to do, because when you move knight f8, you neglect the cover of the e5 pawn. So I think white is somewhat better in this position as well. However, white is also better in the game continuation after d5. This is basically saying, okay, you're playing a check Benoni. This is a check Benoni formation where black has the bishop, queen placed on, yeah, not really the best squares, and it takes a bit of time for him to get f5 going in some kind of way, because this f5 push would be the only active possibility that black has in this position. And I felt, again, this is difficult to achieve. I have knight h4, for example, looking at this square, or sometimes bishop h3. So I was thinking, okay, I've got more space, and black pawn levers look weird or look difficult to do. b5 would be the other pawn break, but that is not easy to play either, simply because with the pieces placed as they are, he cannot cover b5 that often, so that it is possible. And even if it happens, it's not really a big issue. So I felt like the space should give me something. The engine is like giving me roughly one pawn. Okay, black played knight f8, opening up this idea. and maybe bringing the knight to g6. This is something that you can actually argue about, because a knight on g6 oftentimes is misplaced due to the pawn being on g3. And knight here mostly looks at protected squares. On the other hand, you can argue that with black's limited space, you need some place for this piece, and d7 is probably standing in the way. Yeah, here it's an interesting choice what to do. I played the move bishop h3. I can put it on the board. By the way, this text here, Weiß steht besser, white is better, this is similar to some evaluations here. This is from the automatic analysis of ChessBase. In ChessBase you can do this tactical analysis where you let the engine check every move for, let's say, 3-4 seconds, and then it does an auto commentary on it. And this is what I actually often do if I get a fresh game and I want at least an idea. If I blundered something, I would invest the 2 or 3 minutes, yeah, start the automatic analysis, and I don't know, yeah, do something in the kitchen, then return and I see, okay, there was no obvious blunder in there. And then starting from that, like, let's say, rough commentary, I'm going to do my own work on it. So some of this is actually from the computer, yeah, not by me. So bishop h3, knight g6 is what he played. The move bishop h3 is actually something that is not a totally clear choice. It has a couple of ideas. I'm taking more control over f5 and basically invite the trade with bishop c8. On the other hand, I'm trading, which I don't like to do with having more space. Yeah, white definitely has more space. The upside is the bishop on g2 is on a light square, and I've got 5 pawns on light squares. This is not such a big deal due to my space, but still, it's not the greatest of pieces. I don't really mind the trade all that much, and what really encouraged me to do it is that I actually trade off with bishop c8. You really know that bishop c8 will probably happen. With this traded, his light squares, f5 in particular, are weak, and maybe it makes f5 more difficult to play. So I think it's a move that you can play. It's not a necessity. Knight g6, and here I played the move knight to e1. Yeah, it's certainly possible. The knight on f3 is not ideally placed, that's clear. The question is where to put it. I was thinking the knight is best on d3, and this is where it landed just a couple of moves later. d3 oftentimes is a good square for this piece. We can just put this on the board, by the way. Let's do it. Knight e1, bishop c8, as expected. And I think black is right in doing this. Yeah, the bishop on b7 is fairly useless. So we got this trade, and now I played knight to d3. The knight is actually normally well placed on d3 in a Benoni structure, because the 2 key breaks that white has, b4 and f4, are both supported. So this is a fairly normal square for it. I could have also played knight c2 or knight g2 in order to place it on e3. This also would have been a good square, looking at f5, so that any future black ideas to play f5 himself, yeah, is pretty much prevented, and you can jump to f5 maybe yourself. Also reasonable. I went to d3, and he played queen h3 now. It's a tempting move. Yeah? The queen looks threatening on the king side. What was possible here was b5. Maybe this is something that black should have considered to play. Here I cannot. No, well, it doesn't help, at least. Yeah, taking here doesn't help. The a file is open, and then something like this looks a bit strange to play. Yeah, it's maybe not terrible as the ending suggests, but I don't really want to do that. I would have simply kept the tension and played similarly to the game. Knight d1 is what I played in the game later. So queen h3 was played. So now you have to think about what to do on the king side with white. yeah, how to set this up. I mean, black has a couple of pieces there, and you have to be a little bit on the lookout that there isn't some kind of weird attack brewing on that side of the board. So I played f3, which is kind of, yeah, it has to be played anyway in some way. Yeah? It supports e4. That makes the knight on c3 yeah, mobile. It allows knight f2 to kick the queen out of the white position, or it sometimes allows also queen g2. Yeah, that's a move that has to be played basically no matter what. Yeah, black played h6. And this is an interesting move for knight h7. Yeah, here I had a longer think because it wasn't totally obvious to me what I should do. I first thought I should probably play for b4. This is here is a possible line to show what happens. b4, trying to open up the b file. It is slow. It's a really slow way of playing, especially considering that my bishop on b2 is misplaced. Now the bishop on b2 looks at this, which doesn't make all that much sense unless I'm able to bust this open with f4. With b4 I'm saying, okay, I'm playing on the b file, and then this bishop on b2 really is misplaced. Yeah, I expected here something like this, but I wasn't entirely sure how good that is. I have this c6 square, looks like, but whenever I go there, after some bishop f8, knight e7, that can be traded. Also note that while b6 is probably the weaker pawn, c4 is also weakened by this procedure. Ultimately, I found an idea that was too tempting to not play. And I actually saw pretty far ahead here. And I'm happy that I assessed it correctly. I played the move knight to d1. So how did that move come to my mind? Well, I was looking at the pieces and I felt that the knight on c3 doesn't do all that much. Of course, it is on this pawn, on this square, so that b5 is maybe a little bit under control. Still, if black would play that, I mean, he can do it, yeah? a2 also hanging. So it's not like a total insurance, the knight against b5. But I was thinking, why not try to get the knight onto f5? Isn't that a good square? Okay, it is a good square, quite clearly. Also, knight to f2 could be an idea, yeah. But mostly f5 was on my mind. And I saw the following line. He played knight h7. This was to be expected. Knight to e3. Yeah. By the way, the engine wants to play b4 anyway. I mean, it's playable. It's not bad at all. It's just that I had an idea and I was too tempted. So, knight e3, bishop g5. And this is setting up a pin. Yeah, and now comes the idea that I had when I played knight d1. I played just knight f5. I was simply giving up this exchange. And this is what makes this an interesting game. The material imbalance that we now get. Yeah, black has no real choice in this situation here. You have to see that I am also threatening to play knight f2, winning the queen. So he cannot just yeah, play any other move. Like here, I have knight f2, queen h5, and now actually, I don't know, g4, that's actually still knight f4. But the queen is in enormous trouble here. Yeah, even h4 comes into mind. The engine wants to play rook ce1, and then later h4 g4. Yeah, I mean that looks really dreadful. Also, I mean, taking the exchange is clearly the critical choice. So he took it. And now, that's funny, knight f2 is a real threat, is the translation of that. And yeah, that's true. Knight f2 now will trap the queen. So if he now plays something like this, I will win the queen. It doesn't have any squares. So I anticipated knight e7. And now we come to the most interesting moment maybe of the game. when I was playing knight d1, I anticipated this position, that this will happen, and I saw the line that actually happened in the game that I played. And what I did play is the following. I just want to show you first what I did and then the alternative so that you can compare. I played knight f2 in this position, attacking the queen. The queen has no squares besides h5. So he went to h5. Now I take the pawn. That was what I had seen when I played knight d1, that I will win d6 for sure. Rook moved, g4. Queen has only h4 or g6. He went to h4. And now I come back to f5. So what I do have is I have one pawn for the exchange, and it is the fantastically good d5 protected passer. I have this great knight on f5, and if it gets traded, I will actually get, and this happened in the game, the e4 square. This is what I saw when I played knight d1, back when I played the knight here, that in this situation with the exchange down, I will have plenty of compensation. However, when we got here, I started to think about this a little bit more, and then I discovered an idea that was extremely interesting. The idea was to not play knight f2, but rather take on d6 first. Yeah, what is the point of it? Okay, taking the pawn is fairly obvious actually, but the problem is after rook e d8, which is clearly the best move, if black is playing something else, like here, I just win the second pawn. And then I've got two center pawns for the exchange, e and d pawn, and a complete steamroller of a game. Yeah? Plus look at those knights, yeah, f4 and so on. It's fantastic. So this is the only move. And now the problem is that the knight on d6 doesn't have a good way back. Yeah? In the game, I had this g4 idea, and then I had knight f5. Here, this is not possible. If I insert this, for example, and he goes back, my knight really doesn't have many options. Yeah, something like this is not that great. Now here I'm in exchange down, and my compensation is not enough. I'm actually surprised that the engine still gives me some sort of compensation. It really looks bad. So what is the idea? Yeah, actually in this position here, white has two interesting options. The first option is to, that's actually not right. The first move is pretty clear that you play it, but you have to take here on f7. Okay, yeah, the king takes. I think that he has to do that. There's not much choice. And now there are two options, and I looked at them both during the game. I can take on e5 with check or play f4. f4 is the stronger move, probably. If I take on e5, king g8, white, now we have to take stock. White has sacrificed a rook, a full rook, for 3 pawns. So white has the d5, e4, and a3 pawn for the rook. I saw this position and I felt I could have enough compensation. The computer actually does support this view. I have this stockfish here running in the background, yeah, like 0.4. I've also checked it with some like 40 core whatever, yeah, from the engine cloud of ChessBase, and it actually believes that white is slightly better. This is something that once you look at it a little bit more, you tend to appreciate better. During the game, it is not that easy. For example, white can just continue this game. I just make a couple of moves to show. Just continue this in a fairly slow fashion. Yeah, you just say, okay, I've had this steamroller and I'm not in a huge hurry to push it forward. White will push this forward slowly. Yeah, even g4 can be sometimes played. The black pieces really don't do all that much. They're kind of sitting there, and I'm mostly hoping, yeah, to get a counter sacrifice and to stop the pawns. It is still not an easy decision. I mean, you give up a rook for 3 pawns and a compensation while being, it's obvious that there is something. It's still a tough decision to make in a real game. The second option was, after the capture, to play the move f4. I also saw this, and I felt that this is probably the most promising of the whole bunch once we sacrifice on f7. Yeah, here black has two choices mostly. He can allow the capture on e5. Here white can also take with a pawn. That's the difference to knight takes e5. Or he can take on f4. If we look the first option first, king g8, here after knight takes, we would get the same position type as we've seen before. The 3 pawns, steamroller in the center for the rook. Or f takes. And this is actually stronger here, because white gets a pawn onto e6. That makes it extremely dangerous. For example, rook f8, knight f4, queen c8, e6. And these pawns are fantastically strong. They completely divide the board, and they also are simply pushing forward. Yeah, I mean, this is quick. d6 is coming now. As you see, the computer is already liking white in this position. And one thing is clear, defending this position in an actual game for black is absolutely hellish. Yeah? I saw that this is pretty strong. I was rather irritated by black maybe taking on f4. That seems to be stronger. Knight takes, queen to d7, and now knight e6 check. King g8, queen g4. That's fairly forced. And now we see that black, being a rook up, has some problems finding a move. Queen g7 checkmate is the problem. It seems that he has to return material already. Black cannot play something like, let's say this. After bishop h6, white is going to win this very quickly in an attack. So he has to give it back. Knight d5. Now c takes and e takes are both interesting. Yeah, it's tough to say what's better really. But a sample line that I worked out together with the engine is c takes d5. Rook f8, bishop h6, takes, knight f6. Yeah, and while this looks okay for white, absolutely, it's really tough to judge during the game. I saw in the game that I get this and that he has to give this back, but I couldn't really figure out if this is good for me or not. It looked tempting, but I wasn't sure. By the way, there's also the move bishop takes h6 in this position. That also is interesting. And black is just about hanging on here. Yeah, we have to note that the capture after queen g4 is immediately losing. This is also, rook f6 is the only winning move. It's far from intuitive. Yeah, bishop h6, knight d5, same counter sacrifice, takes, rook f4. Again, it's a rook. Yeah, it seems to be enough in this case to have a draw in hand, but white is probably not better. In this main line, I've continued this a little bit with this, and it's such a long analysis. Yeah, we had this position already. And, at the end, the engine says white is better. Maybe it is, but it's extremely difficult, of course, to figure out. In this position, instead of knight e6, white could also go e5. Interesting. Just saying, okay, 2 pawns are enough. I'm playing for e6. After king g8, e6, queen b7, bishop b2, white has a tremendous position, really, for the rook. Yeah, those pawns are fantastic. Is it enough? Probably yes. Yeah, again, I've looked at this with the engine. and it has at the end evaluated this as okay for white, at least yeah, enough compensation. There are also many ways for black to go wrong. For example, if you yeah, play something slowish, rook c8, then after queen e5 you're already wiped out. This is a funny line, and rook takes g7 is absolutely deadly, or queen h5, despite the huge material disadvantage. Yeah, when I was in the game, I was seeing parts of that. I mean, when you have to be realistic, I saw that. I saw up to no, that's wrong. Take, and then I saw that he has to give it back, but that situation was not clear to me. Maybe I should have gone for it simply for the sake of this being really cool, and when black has to find it all, yeah, and defend this properly. It's not easy to do. Maybe I should have done it. At the end I was a little bit yeah, after I checked it with the big engine, and it said, okay, you could have done it. However, what I played, knight f2, queen back, knight d6. By the way, there was also, was that here actually? No, a little bit later. Knight d6, g4 intermediate move, queen h4. He could have gone to g6. It's not a huge difference. Again, it's hard for black to not take on f5, and then we get the same position type as in the game. Played this, and now again knight f5. So yeah, here black has to take. It's interesting that queen to f6 loses immediately due to g5, which is funny, I think, somehow. After this and this, the queen is trapped. It's really nice. Yeah? He has a check. We move the king, and the queen has absolutely no squares. Everything is covered. It's pretty nice. So here he was forced to capture the knight, and after e takes, the e4 square is clearing. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to do that. It's not a good idea. The e4 square is cleared for my knight. He played rook e8. Yeah, and now, yeah, how do you continue in this position? It's not a position where you can do something extremely straightforward. However, it is clear that the pawn and yeah, the good square on e4 and so on should be enough compensation. It's often the key is to be a bit patient and try to improve a bit and see if the yeah, your opponent gives you some direct ideas what to do, because I don't have such a direct idea myself. You can say, okay, I push the d pawn or so, but that all has to be prepared. I played king h1. That's not a very obvious choice, maybe. The idea of the move is to play rook g1 and make it more difficult for him to move the knight, let's say, to f6. Example, king h1. Let's say you would play knight f6. Then I go rook g1, and the idea is to play g5. And this is quite annoying. The computer, after a while, I mean, it already, you see it already, but if you give it more time, it will support this. He has to go back, actually. And now I've gained a little something in this procedure. Yeah, note that, for example, here I also have g5 as an idea. That's not an easy decision for black. Yeah, the computer is going into this, but this queen has no squares. Yeah, maybe the computer is actually switching his view after a while, because it looks very suspicious. Yeah, now it goes up after a while. Yeah, king h1, queen e7, rook g1 is an idea that I'm quite happy with. It irritates black quite a bit. For example, here you still cannot go knight f6 due to g5. Yeah, this is an absolutely deadly pin. Yeah, bishop h6 is in the mix, knight e4, sorry, knight e4. Black cannot play this. In the game he played queen to d7. This is given a questionable sign. Black should, in this position and in the next couple of moves, I play knight e4 now, he played rook a7, I played bishop e3. He should have played a5 in one of the last couple of moves. And here is the last moment where he has this opportunity. He should absolutely now play a5. He has to stop my idea to play b4. After a5, it's not entirely clear how I should continue. I can go a4, completely blocking the queen side and say, okay, long run, I will be able to play h4 and maybe g5, and I'm the one to play on the king side. Definitely true. I mean, this is a position, if I play a4 here, I will absolutely never lose, because there's no way black is going to open up the position in any kind of way. If I don't want to do anything, nothing will happen. It's not necessary, however, because on a potential a4, I sometimes, and here I think it's the case, I have b4. So pressurizing c5, and if he takes, I take b6, and I get 2 protected passes. However, the difference is that, let's just assume I'm playing a waiting move, and he goes a4, and I go b4. In this situation, these pawns are pretty dangerous, so I have to think about this pretty hard if I want to allow that. Very likely I wouldn't have done that. Okay, the computer wants to go b4, takes b1. Yeah, if I just take this, get this, it would be fine, but you already see after b3 that there is counterplay coming. I don't know, maybe I would have played a4. I'm not sure. What he did is basically losing. After f6, the position becomes from being or switches from being uncomfortable to lost, because I can now go b4 and win either c5 if he does not react to the move at all, or will win or trade b pawn for the b4 pawn for b6. Yeah, this is relatively best, but now after bishop b6, I'm getting the 2 protected, not protected, but connected pawns, and this will be too strong. There's also still the knight sucking here on h7. He actually pretty quickly put this back. I just want to be ready to take the knight, and I did. Yeah. And here the pawns will be decisive. There's really not much that black can do. Yeah, queen c4, activating pieces. Yeah, and here, okay, c6 was already winning, but I couldn't quite figure it out. Yeah, I mean, I did not like the idea that he might enter here. It's not really a big deal. I have king g2 even, but yeah, I felt like, why not just take the b pawn? That's the only pawn that with a5, a4 potentially is a danger, and I have time. Yeah, rook b8. It doesn't really matter anymore. Queen c4, rook b2, and now d6 check. Here after queen to f7, I had to do a bit of calculation. That's really an important moment now. Because after the trade, there is a potential counterplay with rook h8. Yeah. However, after c6, I am winning. After rook h8 wasn't played, but in this case, I have rook d2. And now white wins fairly easily, because the 2 pawns on the 6th rank are just too dangerous. After king e8, you have this going here, and then the pawns promote. Wins. The other line that was important to look at was rook c2. And now I can play c7. Yeah. In this variation, he cannot check me here, and after rook c1, knight d6 and promotion, I have a winning ending. Important little tactic. Also, after c7, rook h8, again, does not threaten all that much because of rook d2. Other things also will win, but rook d2 is easiest. After the trade, he cannot stop the pawns. Oops, the pawns. So after c7, he played rook d7, but now after rook b1 and rook b8, white is winning fairly easily. So after these moves, he resigned the game. So I'm reasonably happy with this. I think I didn't make any substantial mistake in this game. There was this interesting moment here when I could have sacrificed the knight on f7. So we're talking about this moment, and I don't know, maybe I should have done it simply for the yeah, because it's nice. Yeah, I mean, and I saw that it's not totally ridiculous, but I couldn't quite really figure it out if it is good. Also you have to keep in mind that the alternative that I had was leading to a position that was also like here. It was also very nice for white. I mean, it's a kind of position where you can basically not lose, and you have all the chances to pose problems. And I like this a lot with the knight on e4 and so on. It's more of a strategic solution, of course. I don't know. Yeah, taking on f7. Maybe I would have done it under other circumstances. Yeah, if you have a situation where you really have to win the game, everything else doesn't count, then this is probably an offer you cannot not refuse, to take on f7. Would have been interesting at least, and I'm a little bit sad that I didn't do it, but it's I'm at least happy that I saw the idea. Yeah, sometimes you are completely surprised once you look at the game afterwards, what you miss. And I saw the idea, and I felt it could work, but couldn't quite bring myself to play it, given that the alternative was also fairly good. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I probably will make at least one more video on games from that tournament that was played last week. Will be on probably after the weekend. On the weekend I will make more videos, I have more time. Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye bye.